I am 28 years old, unemployed, and I haven't left my apartment for anything more than necessities in nearly 6 months. My home is a single-room efficiency on the 3rd floor of the Willow Creek Apartments, a crumbling brick building on the edge of a forgotten neighborhood where the rent is cheap because no one with options would live here. The hallways always smell like old cooking oil, concrete, and something faintly sour. The fluorescent lights buzz and flicker, casting sickly yellow shadows that make everything look diseased. Most days, I keep the curtains drawn tight, living in a perpetual twilight lit only by the blue glow of my monitor and the harsh white of the mini-fridge. My diet consists of instant ramen packets, energy drinks, and whatever canned goods are on sale. Sleep comes in jagged fragments, interrupted by the distant arguments of neighbors and the occasional scream of a car alarm. That was my life, empty, repetitive, safe in its numbness, until Elena Voss moved into the unit directly across the hall 4 months ago. The first time I saw her was through the peephole. I'd heard the metallic clatter of a moving dolly and the low murmur of voices as movers hauled boxes. Curiosity, that rare spark in my dead routine, pulled me to the door. I pressed my eye to the tiny lens, and there she was. She was beautiful in a way that felt almost painful. Tall and slender, with pale skin that seemed to drink in what little light the hallway offered. Dark hair fell in soft waves to her shoulders, framing a face with high cheekbones, full lips, and eyes that looked almost too large, too expressive. She wore a simple white blouse tucked into tailored black trousers, moving with a quiet grace that made the tired movers look clumsy by comparison. When she smiled at one of them and thanked him, her voice carried through the door like velvet, low, modulated, polite. Something inside my chest twisted. Not love, not yet, just recognition. She was alive in a way I wasn't. From that moment, she became my world. It started small, harmless, I told myself. I bought a small wooden stool and placed it by the door so I could sit comfortably for hours. I kept a spiral notebook nearby, along with my phone set to record audio or video at the slightest sound. I logged everything with meticulous care. 7:41 a.m. Elena leaves for work. Gray silk blouse today, tight black pencil skirt that hugs her hips, low black heels that click rhythmically down the hall. Brown leather satchel slung over her shoulder. Hair pinned up, exposing the elegant line of her neck. She pauses for a second at her door, checking her reflection in a small compact mirror before walking past my unit. 8:17 p.m. Returns carrying 2 grocery bags. I can make out the shapes through the distorted lens. A carton of milk, fresh vegetables, a package wrapped in white butcher paper that leaves a faint bloody smear on the plastic. She fumbles slightly with her keys, and for a moment her face turns toward my door. I freeze, heart hammering, but she doesn't notice. 11:02 p.m. Shower starts. The pipes groan through the thin walls. Exactly 19 minutes later, it stops. She hums the same soft, tuneless melody every time, a wandering 3-note phrase that rises and falls like a question without an answer. I press my ear to the wall during these moments, eyes closed, imagining the water sliding over her skin. I learned her routines like a scholar studies scripture, the way she sorted her mail in the hallway, the precise tilt of her head when she listened to music through earbuds, the faint scent of floral shampoo and warm skin that lingered in the elevator when I timed my trips to coincide with hers. I started following her to the small supermarket 3 blocks away, always keeping distance, one oblivious pedestrian between us. My pulse thundered in my ears every time the automatic doors hissed open. Inside, I watched her select produce, her fingers brushing over tomatoes and avocados with delicate care. Once, she reached for the same package of ground meat I was pretending to examine. Our hands nearly touched. I inhaled deeply. Floral, clean, with something richer underneath, almost metallic. She never seemed to notice me. I was invisible, safe, a ghost haunting her periphery. At night, when the building quieted, I pressed my ear against the shared wall between our apartments. Her soft footsteps moved from kitchen to living room to bedroom. Sometimes there were other sounds, wet, rhythmic noises that drifted through the thin plaster, slapping flesh, low sucking, muffled gasps. They twisted something deep in my gut, a sick heat I tried to ignore but couldn't. I disabled the hallway light fixture with a pair of wire cutters one midnight, plunging our corridor into deeper shadow. Now I could watch her pass without fear of reflection giving me away. Every time she walked by my door, I took out the small folding knife I kept by the stool and scratched a thin mark into the wooden doorframe. One scratch per passage. The tally grew, dozens, then over 100, tiny vertical lines like prison days counted on a cell wall. Each one was a claim, a secret communion. The thefts began innocently enough. Her mailbox was easy to access. The lock was cheap. Credit card offers addressed to Elena Voss. A handwritten note from someone named M that read, "Thinking of last weekend. Can't wait to see you again." I kept them all in a shoebox under my bed, inhaling the faint paper scent that had touched her hands. Then I graduated to her trash. Late at night, after 2 a.m. when the building slept, I'd slip out in socks, heart pounding, and dig through the heavy black bags by the chute. Used tissues stained with lipstick the color of crushed cherries. Long, dark strands of hair that I wound carefully around my fingers before pocketing. Empty cosmetic bottles, still carrying traces of cream. Food wrappers from rare steaks, the butcher paper soaked with juices that had dried to a rusty brown. The faint smell of meat clung to everything. I kept the best items as trophies, sealed in plastic bags inside the shoebox. My phone became a shrine. Hundreds of zoomed, low-light photos and videos, the curve of her neck as she bent to tie her shoes, the way her fingers brushed her collarbone when she locked her door, the subtle sway of her hips in that black skirt. I organized them into hidden folders, categorized by date, outfit, time of day. At night, I scrolled through them in the dark, breathing shallow, until exhaustion pulled me under. The closest I ever came was the afternoon she left her door slightly ajar while hauling in packages from an online delivery. My mouth went dry. For almost a full minute, I crossed the hall on silent feet and stepped inside her apartment. The air was warm, intimate, saturated with her scent. Floral shampoo, clean skin, and that deeper, indefinable warmth. I stood in her living room, trembling, eyes darting over the simple furniture, the half-read novel on the coffee table, a single wine glass in the sink. I heard her footsteps returning and slipped back out just in time, pressing myself against the wall as her door clicked shut. Adrenaline surged through me like lightning. I felt more alive than I had in years. Everything felt perfect. She was mine in a way no one else could understand, a private universe orbiting only me. Then the cracks appeared. Her trash bags grew heavier, and the smell when I opened them shifted, sweet and rotten, almost sickening, like meat left in the sun. She started wearing high collars and long sleeves even on warm days, covering her neck and wrists completely. Through the walls, her voice sounded too careful, too rehearsed, like she was performing for an unseen audience. The humming in the shower grew slightly off-key, the notes lingering too long. One night, after 3 days of almost no sleep, I was glued to the peephole when she stood in the dimly lit hallway and slowly peeled off her face. It started at the hairline, Her fingers dug in, and the realistic skin, complete with pores, faint freckles, and the subtle flush of life, lifted like a tight, sweaty mask. It rolled downward in one slow, wet motion, folding neatly in her hands. Beneath it was raw, glistening, pale flesh, slick and translucent in places. No real eyes, just dark, vertical slits that gleamed wetly, reflecting the lamplight like oil on water. A mouth without lips curved into a tired, knowing smile, revealing rows of small, sharp teeth. She exhaled with a sound like damp meat shifting in a butcher's hands, then placed the used face carefully into a sealed plastic bag. I didn't scream. I couldn't. My body locked in place on the stool, eye burning against the lens, as the thing that wore Elena Voss turned and disappeared deeper into her apartment with an unnatural, fluid gait. The obsession turned frantic after that. I barely slept. I barely ate. I watched constantly, terrified of missing even a second. My notebook filled with frantic, looping entries. I started testing her, leaving a single dark hair stretched across her doorknob each morning, whispering her name through the gap under my door at 3 a.m. just to feel the sick thrill of risk. Once, while she was out, I picked her lock with trembling hands, using tools bought online. I stepped inside for 10 terrifying seconds. The air was colder than it should have been. I touched her bedsheets. They were ice cold, almost damp. On her nightstand lay another face mask, this one slightly different, subtler makeup, a different hairstyle. I fled before I could be caught. She began to change her behavior too. She lingered outside her door longer than usual, turning her head with unnatural smoothness to stare directly at my peephole. Her masked smile was always polite, lips curving just so. I imagined the raw thing beneath it, smiling wider, teeth glistening. The wet sounds through the walls grew louder some nights, slapping, tearing, rhythmic sucking that no longer sounded solitary. I pressed my ear harder, sweat beading on my forehead, a cocktail of fear and dark arousal churning inside me. Then came the final night. The hallway was completely black. I had disabled the light long ago, and no one had bothered to fix it. I was at the peephole as always, barely breathing. The hallway was dark. I was unable to see anything when I realized I was staring at a face. It was the woman. She was centimeters from my door. No mask this time, just raw, glistening flesh and those dark vertical slits staring straight into my eye through the tiny lens. I couldn't breathe, couldn't pull away. A soft, wet chuckle slid through the wood, low and intimate. "I know you've been watching me," she whispered. The voice was no longer the practiced human tone of Elena Voss. It was deeper, wetter, like vocal cords coated in thick fluid. "I've been watching you too." I heard a slow scrape, like claws or something harder dragging down the outside of my door, leaving faint grooves I would discover later. "I like the way you count the days on your frame," she continued, almost tenderly. "I like how desperate you are, how you steal my hair and my trash, how you touch yourself in the dark while listening to me." My hand reached for the knife by the stool, but my fingers wouldn't obey. Terror and something darker, hotter, flooded through me in waves. My pants grew wet and warm with piss, but I didn't care. She pressed closer. I could smell her now through the gap. Mineral, sweet rotten, exactly like those heavy trash bags that had grown fouler over the weeks. The scent of true her. "Keep watching," she breathed. "I'm almost ready to take my mask off for you, permanently. You've been such a good observer, such a devoted little hunter. I think you'll look beautiful without your skin." Her outline stayed there for what felt like an eternity, the vertical slits never blinking. Then it melted back into the darkness with that same fluid grace. Her door clicked shut across the hall. I sat there until morning, eye burning, body shaking, the scratches on my doorframe staring back at me like accusations or invitations. I smiled in the dark, teeth chattering with fear and twisted joy, because deep down I finally understood the truth. She had chosen me. She had been hunting me longer than I had been stalking her. Every routine I thought I'd discovered, every trash bag I'd raided, every moment I believed I was invisible, she had allowed it, cultivated it, savored it, and I couldn't wait for her to finally come inside.